Okay, well, welcome, and I'm very pleased to go to the next part of our program. And in keeping with the theme of our program, which is litigating in challenging times, how to prepare yourself for COVID litigation landscape, I can't think of a single individual in this province who has greater influence when it comes to that than our next speaker, Attorney General Doug Downey. By way of background, Mr. Downey practiced law in a law firm in Aurelia since 1999. He was legislator in 2018, and as soon as he was elected, he was appointed as the administrative assistant to the finance minister, Vic Fedeli. And at that time, he had some input into the auto insurance reforms, and was making some headway in that regard. In 2019, he was appointed as the Attorney General for Ontario. And his work in modernizing the court system began in June of 2019. And then it was accelerated as a result of COVID since March of this year. So I'd like to welcome our speaker, Attorney General Doug Downey, who is going to talk about some of the changes that have already been implemented and what we can expect to see in the future in terms of modernizing the court system. So I'll leave it to you, Mr. Downey.
Thank you so much, Gary. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to join you here in this, and this is what we've become used to as the court system has adapted, and very quickly, I have to add, to a new platform, to this kind of platform. It's quite remarkable to me that some of the things that people only talked about came alive in a matter of weeks. The nature of the justice system continues to evolve. We've started some change, like you mentioned. We started some in 2019. The pandemic came and it transformed every part of our lives. And what an incredible sudden change across the board. You mentioned that some of the changes started in my passion for change started in 2019. Some of the people here may not know I was a court clerk and a court registrar before I went to law school. So I was the person on the other side of the counter receiving the paperwork from you guys, and then went on to spend some time in the courtrooms, that individual that you don't actually notice who manages all the paper in front of the judge. That was my job. And so I come at this with different hats on. And I'll tell you, we were doing things the same way, in January as we were doing them 25 years ago, 30 years ago. The system just had to change. And COVID-19, it exposed the severity of the problem that we had. The Auditor General said that we were running about 95% paper-based in our system. That's really incredible. It's almost like you had to work at it to maintain that level. So when COVID came, many of us who had been working to modernize, the bar associations, the judiciary who wanted to modernize. I'll tell you a really quick little story with Justice Eberhard when she was first appointed to the bench. I was as a court clerk at a trial in Peterborough, and she had this remarkable ability it was a family law trial, and she did the trial, and then she went back and she printed off her decision off this crazy thing called a laptop. And it was revolutionary in its time. And now that's just a piece of equipment that we all have on our desk. There was a real hunger for change. The emergency made it necessary, and the justice partners all came together. I can't emphasize enough. There was not one group or any particular person who did it. Everybody came to the table, and we accelerated the pace of change. I like to tell people in the early days, I said we moved the system forward 25 years and 25 days. And in fact, we have moved it decades in months, and there's more to do. We are doing more stuff. The one thing that I do know, we cannot go backwards. We cannot afford to go backwards. We will not be going backwards. We have harnessed some really good advances, and individuals from across the system, and including how the public is served, has changed, and we're going to stay with that. we're now ramping the system up. You've seen the system ramp up. You've seen trials. You've seen bail and remand hearings now in custody are 100% done by video. We're now doing remand out of custody by video. We're doing JPTs scheduled, so you're not sitting in court all day waiting for your turn. Starts at 9:30, ends at 10 o'clock like it's supposed to. Good for you, good for the client, good for the administration. We're going to see more of that kind of stuff. We're addressing the backlogs. We're tackling the criminal juries because there's some urgency to that, and you're seeing that even just this week and in the coming weeks, where we're adding capacity to be able to make the system more accessible, more responsive, make it more. It's very resilient. And a lot of the time when I'm talking about the justice system, people automatically go to the courtroom. They think about the court process, but as you know, as practicing lawyers know, it's more than that. So some of the changes that I brought in through the Smarter and Stronger Justice Act that we introduced last December and is in force in July addresses things like estates because that's something that affects an awful lot of people. And we brought in a scheme so that you can manage small estates, because currently it's the same process, whether your estate's 50,000 or 500,000. It's the exact same process. And that didn't make sense to me. And we were seeing estates that weren't being administered because it wasn't worth it, wasn't worth the hassle. That's just one little piece. The other piece, during the pandemic, we brought in special rules for witnessing of wills. And we've taken the opportunity to broaden the scope. You'll hear more about estates changes in the future. We got feedback on all these things, but we had also started and then expedited online commissioning and notarizing, which does affect every practitioner. So the commissioning is in place now. The notarizing, I want to take a little more time, make sure we get it right. We want to make sure that it's secure and acceptable to the banks and the other institutions that deal with those documents. But again, we'll keep working on that. And this just increases the competitive advantage for all Ontarians. It's really not just about the lawyers and the judges in the courtrooms. It's for the average person who's interacting with the system. So I'm pretty excited. I hope you can sense that I have of how we're making change. And again, partners enough. All three Chief Justices, Chief Justice Strathy and Chief Justice Morowitz and Chief Justice Mazenov, have all been, shoulder to the grindstone with us. The practicing bar has been very patient, I have to say, and very constructive. They've given us good input, but we do have to get rolling at full speed. So some of the things that immediately that we put in place, 2.7 million, a couple $1 million we put into laptops and JVNs or VPNs rather, and the JVN system. We put a bunch of infrastructure in the front end. But what we really needed was things like case lines that we now brought on. And for those litigators who have long said, why don't we have an online filing system? You now do. And that system will expand. It's really quite a good system. I'm very, very excited about that. And we put in place the online court data search service, and that will expand in time as well. And I won't bore you with the details of what each of these functions do, but they're all independent projects that really serve different parts of law, but make the system more accessible. And the way people are interacting with the system, the e-filing, we have 400 more forms that you can file online. The system is ripe for change in tribunals, whether we talk landlord-tenant, social benefits, all that stuff. And I had actually struck a deal with Minister Eby, the Attorney General of BC, back in January. And they have an online tribunal system that is really, really excellent. And the deal is effectively, you can use what we have, as long as you share your improvements with us. And so we started that last January. Pandemic hit, reinforced why we need to do it. You're going to see some major change in that space. There are so many things that we're working on, but the most critical thing is that it has to be practical, and we have to meet the needs of what people are looking for to make the system more accessible. Some of the great side benefits of what we've been doing is there was a court case. I won't name which ones, but 1,000 people who had an active interest in that court case were able to go online and watch the proceedings by their class reps. We had a criminal verdict come out, and 20,000 people signed online on Zoom to see that verdict given. That would never happen before. So we are increasing access to the system, connecting people to their system in a new and I think better way. And I have to tell you, these are all ideas that have percolated up and that we're wrestling with and putting in place. We're always looking for more ideas. Please have your members fire in ideas as they have them. And it just underscores the importance of continuing professional development, which is what you're doing. There's going to be a need for a lot of it. There's a lot of change. It's happening fast. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for the opportunity to tell a little bit about what we've been doing.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And I wonder if I could ask you a brief question, because many of our audience members practice personal injury and insurance law. And what is required to get those cases resolved is the ability to have a trial date, a looming trial date often will settle many cases. What can you tell our audience members about when we can expect that the courts will be functioning and giving trial dates, both judge-alone trials and jury trials?
Yeah, so it's an interesting mix of people who land that question. So as you know, I build the system, and then the judges run the scheduling. So we're trying to arm them with the tools to make scheduling a little more transparent, make it a little more flexible. One of the great things about technology is a judge in Thunder Bay can hear a case in Peterborough if we have the technology in place. So I know it's a real concern for the Chief Justices that we get moving as fast as possible. And again, that's why I mentioned you see the criminal juries process starting, so that we can get this thing moving. Look, we all know the system was broken before. It was already 3 and 4 years to a trial date. That's not acceptable. I'm committed to putting the tools in place so that we can not only catch up, but do better than we did going in.
Well, that's very encouraging words. And if you require any assistance, we're here to help. I want to thank Attorney General Downey for being here today. If anyone that is viewing this program has a question,